Welcome to No Mama Grow Mama with Naledi Stones, where we discuss all topics related to health and wellness. So, we've got this two-part series for you this time with Samantha Monpetit-Huynh, a pre- and postnatal fitness specialist and co-founder of Bellies Inc. In this first episode with Samantha, we discuss the pelvic floor, and we talk about where those muscles are, what they do, and some of the common concerns that can happen during pregnancy and postpartum, specifically if we are not aware of those muscles and what they do and how to engage them correctly. So we'll talk about Kegels, we'll talk about over-tightening, being a little bit lax. We're going to talk about all of it. It's a really awesome episode, so I hope you learn lots. Hola, Naledi Stones here with Samantha Monpetit-Huynh, the co-founder of Bellies Inc. She is a pre- and postnatal fitness specialist, and we're going to do this two-part series today to talk about both pelvic floor health and core health. So we're going to start first with pelvic floor health, if you're okay with that, Samantha.
Sure.
So do you want to sort of lead in and talk about your role with Bellies Inc. and what you do with pelvic floor health?
Okay. My first role is I'm a mother. I've got two girls, 11 and 15. And I've had my own experiences with my own pelvic floor health. And it's interesting how you're doing this two-part series because pelvic floor is a big part of your core, which we will talk about. But we put together my experience of being a personal trainer. I've been specializing in pre and postnatal for about 15 years. And I've had my own experiences where, especially being a fitness professional and having control or somewhat what I felt like control of what my body looked like. And then I got pregnant and had a kid. And then I got pregnant and had another kid and kind of went, what happened? Wait a second.
It changed both times.
Yeah, this isn't what I signed up for. How come, wait a second, this is not, it really put things in perspective. And so I really found, that was a passion of mine that if I had a really hard time kind of figuring out what was going on with my body and why it was happening, especially when all the information out there said, as long as you exercise during pregnancy and you get back as quickly as possible, everything should go back. It wasn't the case. And I met my two amazing business partners, Kim Vopney, who's in Vancouver, and Julia DePaulo here in Toronto, and are all working in that same realm of with moms, pregnant women, and postpartum. We found there was a huge missing, not even a hole, it's like it's like a big, massive crater of information where what do women do to properly prepare their bodies for pregnancy and birth, and how do they safely restore postpartum so they're not suffering from so many of what people think are normal. It's common, but it's not normal dysfunctions.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you guys so much for working on this. Because we're starting to see more information. But there still is, maybe it was a huge crater when you came into it, but there still is a hole. I can't believe it. I've had 3 children as well. And it wasn't until I became a Salsa Babies instructor that I did. And I'm a nurse as well. I thought that I knew some things, but I totally had no idea. This was a huge knowledge gap for me. So you're going to be helping a lot of us moms today understand better, and hopefully even for the expectant moms to do things, to prepare their bodies for what's going on.
Exactly.
So, and I'm glad that you also mentioned that pelvic floor is part of core health, because we have kind of been talking about that separately, but it's all in the same area of the body. So it does go together. We're separating it for time's sake and for, not, being overwhelmed with information, but do talk about how the two come together. So I guess talk about your role in terms of pelvic floor health, and when someone comes into you, how can you support new moms?
Well, I basically say to them, your pelvic floor muscles are muscles. And especially women who are really into fitness, you work so hard in the gym to get your abs or whatever it is, or build up your biceps or build up those legs. And they forget about their pelvic floor. Yeah. And your pelvic floor is really, really, really important. And I guess even though there's a lot more conversation about it, and, they might be coming to their doctors and they know about different things, they're still not they don't understand that, you know, a lot of these issues that happen with pelvic floor dysfunction, whether it's incontinence or prolapse, a lot of it can be avoided just from proper posture and proper fitness. You know, there's a, oh my gosh, I think he's a Urogyne, and he's in Arizona, Dr. Bruce Crawford. He's created a program called Pilates because he was so sick and tired of doing bladder lifts on everybody. Mm. And he said incontinence is just a fitness issue. So now that isn't the case for everybody, because sometimes it's not a matter of people aren't doing enough strengthening. Some people are doing too much strengthening, which I will talk about. But if you're going to work so hard on everything else, you've still got muscles down there too. Your pelvic floor muscles, like every other muscle in your body. So if you don't use it, you lose it. Mm-hmm. And for it to work properly, it has to have optimal length. It can't be too loose. It can't be too tight. And it has to be able to perform when it needs to, so you don't have issues like leaking and prolapse and hip pain and back pain and all these other things that can happen from having a dysfunctional pelvic floor.
Right. We're just thinking about like how we look in the mirror. But instead, you know, think about, you know, you don't want to be wearing pads when you're 30 years old because you're peeing a little bit. Okay. So when should we be coming to see a pelvic floor specialist? At what point? Now. Immediately. Forget not necessarily right after pregnancy.
No. So do it. I mean, I would do it in a perfect world as soon as you even think about becoming pregnant. The stats show that 80% of trampolinists leak. Olympic gymnasts, they leak. Basketball players, they leak. A lot of women who've created so much, let me take a step back. A lot of incontinence occurs not necessarily because the muscle is too weak. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's because it's so tight, because people have been taught to grip and brace their core. Mm-hmm. And so it can't take the pressure anymore. Mm-hmm. Right? So when you are doing things that are repetitive, like jumping, crunching, doing all of these bearing down and bracing and pushing a baby out, whatever it is, a lot of people actually go into pregnancy with some kind of core dysfunction. You know, since we've been really focusing on this, when I see clients and they come to me, they say, I've been leaking since I was a teenager. What are you talking about? Yeah, I was an elite athlete. I was a gymnast. I was a dancer, right? All of these things that people don't even think about. They just say, well, you know, it kind of happens, and that's sort of what you do. And my instructor just told me to wear a pad, and it's really common in runners. And so if you could go now and be more preventative from it, even if you don't have any issues, because we know that during pregnancy, so many physical and physiological changes that are occurring. Your hormones are going crazy. Mm-hmm. It really affects your muscles, your tissues, the way you stand, everything. Your body has to adapt to all that extra weight load. So why wait until actually something happens, like you're peeing 25 times a day and you're peeing your pants when you're 6 months pregnant? Mm-hmm. It makes so much more sense to do things to help avoid that issue from happening. Mm-hmm. But because it's been so much normalized, especially in the media, like those commercials from Poise make me crazy.
Yeah.
Right? Showing these women dancing and laughing, wearing their pads. No one is laughing when they pee their pants.
No.
I don't care. Inside, they're slowly dying.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to smell like pee.
No.
Okay? It's very deflating, but people don't talk about it. But now they understand, now Poise understands that people are starting to talk about it more. And I understand where they're coming from, and that they want they want women to feel good about themselves, and they don't want that to be the only thing that defines them. I understand it, but it's a Band-Aid. It doesn't fix what caused the problem in the first place, right? Yeah. So as soon as you can. But then other people will say, well, I had my babies 20 years ago. It's too late for me. Absolutely not. Pelvic floor physio it's number one, it's 80% effective. Okay. And why wouldn't you do something even now so you could get out of wearing pads?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? I've been working really closely with, obviously, one of my business partners. So Julia DePaolo is a pelvic floor physio here in Toronto. And the story she tells me, the amazing success stories where she changes people's lives, because for years, 20 years, they've been wearing pads, and not just panty liners, full on pads, right? Or they have to get off they know their route on the way to downtown. They have to get off at X number of subway stops to pee, because they know otherwise they're going to leak.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to give people their confidence back, there's no need to wait. Do it now.
Do it now. Absolutely.
Now.
Yeah. Because the thing is, it could potentially get worse as well, right? Like, it's not just that you're peeing yourself.
Well,
right?
here's the thing. And so people think, well, I just leak a little, and it's only when I've got a full bladder and I might cough or sneeze or whatever, and they've already just resigned themselves that they're never going to be able to do a jumping jack again, because forget it, I do pee my pants, and they kind of laugh. But that happens to my sisters, that happens to my mom, and all that other stuff. But that's a first sign. Right. You're getting a big, like, woo, red lights flashing saying, okay, something's not right here. All right. When you ignore these signs, then it starts to get worse. So either the leaking gets heavier, or things like pelvic organ prolapse start to happen. So here's my pelvis.
Hey, nice.
Hi, here's my pelvis, okay? So here's your pelvis. And you've got the front of your pubic bone here. You've got your 2 hip bones that you can feel on either side, and you've got your tailbone in the back. Mm-hmm. So you can see that your pelvic floor muscles start at the front of your pubic bone and go right underneath and insert on the bottom of your spine. So right here, all these muscles hold your bladder, your rectum, your uterus. But what happens is in pregnancy, those organs typically get stretched a little bit lower just because of the weight of the baby, right? Mm-hmm. And in most cases, the baby is pressing on the bladder, and that's why people pee 15 times a day when they're pregnant, right? And they might even leak a little bit because there's always that constant pressure on the pelvic floor. So it's not abnormal to come out of a first pregnancy with what you would call a grade 1 prolapse, or the anatomical term is a cystocele. But what happens is when you ignore these signs, and with a grade 1 prolapse, you would have no signs or symptoms other than, and some people don't even pee, they don't even leak. I feel fine. I don't feel anything, right? Mm-hmm. But what happens is you decide, okay, at your 6-week checkup from your doctor says, yeah, you're good. You can go exercise and do whatever you want. It's no fun. You're fine. No problem. So they sign up for a 10K. I've had some women at 6 weeks, they're going to sign up for a half marathon, and they're going to start training for a half marathon. Mm-hmm. It makes me crazy. Mm-hmm. Because you cannot say after birthing children, especially through your vagina, okay, but because this also applies to people who have cesarean deliveries, that you feel strong, especially down there, to be going running. But you do it because other people do it. Mm-hmm. And there's mom and baby boot camp classes, so it must be safe.
We want to be fierce and strong, like strong mama.
Well, I always quote my other business partner, Kim, because she says, you give birth, regardless of how you do it, which is the strongest, most amazing thing you will ever do in your life. You gave, like, a person came out of your body. Oh my God, a man can never say they did that. But we feel our weakest and our most vulnerable. Right. And then we feel like we got to prove something. Like, I almost want to drop an F-bomb, but what the F do you have to prove? You just delivered a person. Yeah. Oh my God. Like, you should be like, put on the rooftops, and you should be, there should be bells and whistles, but no, now we got to prove to somebody. And then we have to lose all signs that we've ever had a baby, which is ridiculous. Because you know what? No, everybody knew you were pregnant. So you're supposed to look like that after, right? But when you have these signs of, and I'm sorry I'm going on these tangents, I do that because I get very passionate, obviously. When you have these signs of leaking, and then you go run, all of a sudden, maybe, I don't know, another 6 weeks later or a couple months later, like, oh, now I'm feeling something heavy in my pelvis. Something doesn't feel right. Or, oh, I wiped and I feel something there, right? And this is when those organs now have hung even farther down, okay? Because they're all just being supported by ligaments and tendons. They're not stapled to the sides of your body, right? They're all able to move and stuff like that. That's the amazing thing about our anatomy. And so then you've got a prolapse of whether it's your bladder, your uterus, or your rectum, and you might even need to have surgery. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people, I'll say our age, but I'm probably like 20 years older than you, think, oh, but that only happens to old people. Oh yeah, my mom had her bladder lifted. She had a sling put in, or my aunt had an emergency hysterectomy. Well, guess what? I know women my age who've had emergency hysterectomies and have had serious prolapses, okay, to the point where the prolapse actually came out of the vagina, right? So there's 4 different levels. You can have a grade 1 prolapse where it's a little bit lower than where it should be. Grade 2 when it's about halfway to where it should be. Grade 3 where it's literally you open your legs and it's right there. And grade 4 when it's out on the table. Right?
Right.
But these things can be avoided. And if your first signs are leaking, don't just think you can do 100 Kegels and then put a pad and go running.
Yeah.
Because guess what? When you go run, you basically undo all the work that you did with those Kegels.
Right.
Right? So seeing a pelvic floor physio will be able to tell you, because you might even need to Kegel. So remember when I was talking about proper length? Okay. So these muscles, there's a lot of muscles. There's also a lot of connective tissue. You also have in muscles, you have slow and fast twitch muscle fibers, right? So you know, but I'll just explain it to you.
Yeah, no, do it. Yeah.
So your slow twitch muscle fibers are the ones that you use for endurance, for isometric exercises where you would hold something. And then you've got your fast twitch muscle fibers are good for sprinting and jumping and have to, quick response. You've got those same muscles in your pelvic floor. So your pelvic floor is an anticipatory muscle that is supposed to contract nanoseconds before you go into movement. So there was actually a research study done by a very world-renowned physio. He's a physiotherapist, yes, Paul Hodges, that showed that your pelvic floor actually goes on nanoseconds before you lift your arm. You think, well, what does my vagina got to do with my arm? But it just shows that your pelvic floor is central to your core and it's trying to stabilize you from within before you lift your arm. So if you've lost any sort of anticipatory connection and you go and run and that pelvic floor doesn't come on right before you run, then you leak.
Right?
So a lot of women who leak, what will they do? They're going to Kegel all the time, because they're afraid of peeing. Well, if I walked around like this, would you give me a bicep curl?
No. Oh, sorry.
No.
You're saying, yeah, okay.
Right? If I was like this, you wouldn't give me a bicep curl because I have nowhere to go.
Right.
Well, it's the same thing with your pelvic floor. If your pelvic floor is all the way up here, because you walk around all the time in a constant Kegel because you're afraid of peeing, guess what? The next time you cough or sneeze, you're going to leak.
Yeah.
Because now you've created the opposite problem. Your muscle is too tight. Maybe, most cases when a woman gives birth vaginally, everything has been stretched. Her muscles are very, very loose. But then she doesn't want to pee, so she's going to Kegel all the time and Kegel. And then that muscle spasms because it has nowhere to go. It doesn't know how to react because it's already up there. Right? So it's really important. Another reason to see a pelvic floor physio is to check that your contractions and also your ability to relax. And I can say, because I was one of them. I guess you can tell just by the way I'm talking, I'm very hypertonic. My personality is hypertonic, right? Right. And so Julia, my business partner, assessed me and she's like, when you see a pelvic floor physio, it is an internal examination inside the vagina and in the anus, should you need that as well. And she's checking for tone. And she's like, wow, you're really strong, Samantha. She goes, but could you relax? And I'm like, I'm relaxing. She's like, no, relax. And I'm like, I'm relaxing. I'm like, relaxing. And it was quite funny because I didn't know how to relax my pelvic floor because nobody told me. Right. Everybody says, do your Kegels, but nobody says, but relax your pelvic floor. And then you say to people are like, what? Relax? What do you mean relax? No, relax. If I relax, because people also, I think, have this visual that if they relax, that urine is just going to constantly drip out of their body and they're just going to leave a trail of pee. Right. And that's not the case. Right. So, I can't say enough why you should see a pelvic floor physio. Yeah.
Do you, so one question I have is it covered by OHIP? Do you know?
Okay. No. OHIP, no. These are physiotherapists. So regular physiotherapists who've had special training, extra education and training in pelvic floor health. And even the training in the pelvic floor, there's all different modules. Like I think there's like 6 or 8. So it's quite intensive, right? Because it depends. There's all kinds of different ways to things that you're treating. It's not necessarily just incontinence. It's not necessarily just prolapse. We have to also remember too that if you've had a vaginal delivery and you've had any episiotomy or tearing, there's scar tissue. So they talk about that. They talk about trigger points. They talk about all kinds of things. But if you've got regular physio coverage, it's covered. Yes. And it doesn't say vagina physio across the front of the receipt. So when you hand it into your HR, it's vagina physio. Nope, it says physiotherapy. Yeah. That's it. And as far as I'm concerned, Julie and Kim and I always say, once you've had a baby, you're always postpartum. I don't care. It could be 2 months, 2 years, 25 years, whatever. You know, and a lot of people will concur, especially like Julie will even say when she sees clients, they end up referring their mothers and they're like, wow, where were you 40 years ago or whatever it is, right? Yeah. I wish you had been there, but their body is different. Now, it doesn't mean you can't be stronger and more functional, but your body, for those people who want to get their pre-baby body back, forget it. Forget it. You're now a mom. This is your mom bod, but it doesn't mean it can't be better and hotter. Yeah. And in most cases, after I work with clients, they'll say, you know what, Samantha, I thought I was strong before, but I wasn't. I was just skinny fat, or, you know, I looked aesthetically, but I had no idea how to engage my core. I had no idea how to do all of these things. I always had a back pain or whatever. So looking on the outside, you know, I always say, don't judge a book by its cover. Don't look at this woman who you think, oh my God, look how amazing she looks. She just had a baby, because that's what we do, right? We compare ourselves all the time, especially after we've had babies, because you have no idea what she could be suffering from. Right. What she could be dealing with, right?
Absolutely. No, totally. Yeah. No, we have, like you were talking about it already, like the culture that we have around, like, you know, giving birth and like getting right back into shape. It's this whole culture that we have, the way that we look at new moms. So,
and that's how Instagram makes me crazy.
Oh, really?
It makes me I mean, I'm on Instagram. Yeah. I do like it for sure. I use it a lot in my business as my own personal brand with Bellies Inc. But the mom bod, the befores and afters, and it, like, it's such it really elevates that pressure, right? That women feel that they have to look a certain way immediately after and join my mom bod fit, get that 6-pack and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, and maybe you could do that, but in most cases, you're going to do that at the risk of so many other things.
Absolutely. At the detriment of your body, you know,
absolutely, for sure.
Is there ever a possibility, a way of doing it correctly? Like, you know, I mean, that's one thing I want to talk about is like, when is it the gold standard? Like, when is it safe to resume working out? If you go and see a pelvic floor specialist and they say, okay, you're looking good down there, when is it safe to resume?
Well, that's what I usually say. So that big hole that we were filling was your first 8 weeks postpartum. Okay. Because typically what happens, unless you're like a crazy uber fitness fanatic who starts running like a week after they have their baby, pushing their baby in the stroller. And I'm like, oh my God, you totally should be sleeping. We created the 8-week core confidence program. Am I allowed to talk about that?
Yeah, please do. Absolutely.
Okay. So it's called the core confidence program. And basically what it does is it allows you to retrain your body before you train, because nobody tells you that you need to retrain those muscles to go back to normal function, right? Even if you've done all the work up into pregnancy, you still were pregnant. You still pushed a baby out, or you had major abdominal surgery, right? So people think, well, but I just had a C-section. What do you just? That was a bigger deal. You were cut open. Like, this is a big deal. So we get people down to basics, whether they are completely sedentary or an Olympic athlete. I don't care what you are. You take you down to basics. You start breathing properly. You start focusing on your proper alignment. You start recruiting your pelvic floor. And they're very gentle restorative exercises that are done you do one exercise a week, and you add one exercise per week over 8 weeks. Okay. And the whole idea is to build that foundation, because, you know, were your children cesarean or vaginal births?
They're all vaginal.
Yeah. They're vaginal. Okay. Do you remember, because mine were cesarean, do you remember the first time you tried to stop your pee sitting on the toilet and like nothing happened?
Nothing happened. I could not believe that.
Yeah. You were like,
even to have a bowel movement, it was like, it just had to happen on its own, because nothing was happening.
Yeah. It was like nothing. You're like, oh my God, I have like no control whatsoever. Yeah. So these are women who sign up for boot camp. Right. Or whatever, right? So as far as I'm concerned, you can't build what's not there. If you do not have a strong foundation, you have no business going to a boot camp, going to the gym, doing any of that. And that can be very deflating, you know, and I understand that personally from being in the fitness profession. My first baby, it was 6 weeks and a day I was in the gym, right? This was 15 years ago.
4 weeks.
Yeah, I was in the gym and I was like doing my stuff and I was taking it slow, but I was like, I need to feel, and for me, a lot of it was just, I have to feel like me again. I have to feel normal. Yeah. But after I had my second, I totally changed things. And even I had a hysterectomy 3 years ago, and I even treated that as if I just had a baby because I had major things. I don't have a uterus anymore, you know, and that affects your pelvic floor. Your pelvic organs affect your pelvic, like all of this is connected.
Yeah.
So doing our 8-week restorative exercise program gives you that foundation. On top of that, you see the pelvic floor physio. If you are a runner, I can pretty much guarantee no pelvic floor physio in the world, well, who's good, is going to give you the green light to go running before 3 months. No way. Usually it's 6 to 9 months. And that's if you've done everything you were supposed to do. You crossed your T's, you dotted your I's, you did everything.
Right.
And so, but saying that to a runner, if there's any runners listening to this, they feel like, oh my God, like, what are you going to do? Like, if you tell them you can't run, you might as well cut their arm off and just send them on their way, right? But when I speak to runners, I say, okay, well then look at it this way. Do you want to run and then in a year, maybe 2, be forced to stop? Or do you want to maybe delay running for now? And then when you start running, you can choose to stop whenever you want. Right? You're the one in control. Your body isn't, right? So it's a lot of people ask me that question. When is it going to be okay for me to go back to exercise? It's not a cookie cutter approach. It's not a recipe. You have to put the work in. Absolutely see a pelvic floor physio. Even if you have no signs of symptoms, nothing, do it anyways. Because you still have, like I was saying, a grade 1 or grade 2 prolapse and have 0 signs of symptoms. I had a client a few years ago who was on disability. She had such excruciating back pain. She had to take off of work. She was seeing a chiropractor, massage therapist, and there was a third thing I can't remember, 3 times a week. And she finally called me and said, you know what, maybe I have a diastasis. Can you come in and assess? I assessed her, not a big deal. I was like, that doesn't explain why you're having this back pain. So I said, you know what, you've done everything, you know, else I've told you to. Why don't you go see my business partner, Julia? And about a month later, it was almost like I could hear her crying over the email. She's like, oh my God, you've changed my life. Like, because if you've ever had chronic back pain, it's pretty brutal. Like it's horrible. I've had it. And she said, for the first time, and I don't know how long, I don't have back pain. She had a grade 2 prolapse. She had a rectal prolapse.
Wow.
Was pulling on the posterior part of her pelvis, pulling on her back. And she didn't have any pressure in her back, in her rectum, but it was the prolapse that was causing her back pain.
Right.
So just see a pelvic floor physio.
Just see a pelvic floor physio. Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, unfortunately, I have never been, and I'm going to be honest. I haven't gone, not because I don't want to go. I just haven't made the time to go and do it. And I'm trying to cheerlead that everyone else goes. So I know that it's on my list of things to do. I want to go. I think my thing is tightness. Like I know I'm not too relaxed. It's the tightening.
Yeah.
I have been doing some things at home for myself. I don't have benefits right now. So I know that that's like one thing for myself, and thinking about other women as well. Like if you don't have benefits, I still believe in like spending the money to go and do that, at least that assessment.
That's what I was going to say, because then at least they can give you suggestions and things that you can do at home.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
A lot of the stuff you can do on your own.
Right. And I know that financially it's a lot cheaper for me to go and do that one assessment, get some tips at home, than be at some point in my life laid up after, having a pelvic sling put in. So I'm saying for all the mamas out there, somehow save the pennies to do this.
Or I can't even remember, but Julia had said to me, even the cost of buying pads, the amount of money you save in just a year of buying pads, going to a physio once. Right.
Great way to think about that. So save while you're on mat leave because you're not using pads for anything, and then go and do that assessment afterwards. Yeah. Yeah.
And don't use menstrual pads because they don't get rid of the odor like an actual incontinence pad. If you're incontinent, get incontinence pads.
Okay. So
I learned that too.
That's great to know. It's great to know. Most people wouldn't know. I wonder if there's like charcoal or something that takes away the odor. So you've provided so much information. You've basically answered all the questions that I had for you in your thing. I just want to break down a little bit.
Okay.
So we talked about the muscles and what that looks like. And we talked about there is a difference between being too relaxed in your pelvic floor and being too tight.
Yes.
Can we just recap a little bit is there any way that you would know without seeing a pelvic floor specialist, whether you're too tight or too relaxed down there?
That's a good one. Well, pain during intercourse is usually an indication of the pelvic floor muscles being too tight. And that's something else that's also is actually quite common, and that people also kind of fluff aside and say, well, I had a baby, I had a couple babies. Like, of course it's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable. Scar tissue, so whether it's from an episiotomy or a tear, scar tissue doesn't stretch, right? It's dead and it's numb, right? Just like your cesarean scar, it's the same thing in your perineum. So if you haven't actually manipulated that and massaged it using castor oil, blood doesn't flow through scar tissue. So if blood doesn't flow through it, that muscle can't do this. So it's like this, right? So then when a penis comes, the vagina goes, ah! So I would say it's more common than not that you'd be hypertonic if you're uncomfortable during intercourse. Oh God, I'm probably going to think of something when I get off the phone. I can't think of anything right now to say that you are too, if you're somebody though, who is you're not a big fitness person, you are more on the sedentary side, is probably a good idea. And if you do leak regularly, if you're somebody that doesn't need a lot of impact to leak, like if you just giggle a little bit, or, you might just jog a little bit down the street and all of a sudden, that sort of thing, that could be an indication that you are more loose. We have certain releases that we do with our clients where we suggest, sitting on a ball. So if you imagine you're sitting on you're sitting on a chair and you pull the fleshy parts away from your glutes. So you're like right on your sit bones, and you would take a small ball. It's almost like a golf ball, but golf balls sometimes are a little bit too hard. Yeah. And you would just put it in between your sit bone and your anus. And a lot of times that can help alleviate and relax the posterior part of your pelvic floor. So that's for somebody who's tight, someone who's a butt gripper, someone who walks around always clenching their bum, right? Which is usually very common in pregnancy and immediately postpartum, because the gravitational pull forward with your belly, you tend to lean back and tuck your pelvis under to counteract for the balance. And then you get that flat bum, right? We call it mum bum. And a lot of times what happens when you walk around with you're almost like always in, what's the word? When you clench your bum, like a wedgie, right? I'll say no wedgies. You relax your bum. If you do that little sitting on the ball between the anus and the sit bone, just in this space here. So you're basically putting the ball, where's the anus? Right here in this groove, there's the anus and there's the sit bone right there. It can be really tender for some people, but just learning to relax and melt over that can help to alleviate any tightness in the posterior part of your pelvic floor. Anterior, honestly, it's just there's no real way to know. We'd just be doing your Kegels. But if you are going to do your Kegels, first of all, what I would just say to everybody is download our Core Confidence program. It's only $10. It walks you through everything. The alignment is really, really important. The way you stand, the way you carry yourself. But as much as you Kegel, also focus on relaxing and letting go. Let go, let go, let go. And a lot of people have a hard time doing that because they've been told to do this so much. Right? So it's kind of, it's hard to really know if you are too loose in the anterior part of your pelvic floor, like around the vagina, unless you've been assessed.
I didn't know. I never checked the cost of your Core Confidence program. It's $10.
Well, it's actually $15, but if you sign up for the newsletter, you get it for $10.
Fantastic.
Have it forever. Yeah.
That's incredibly accessible then for people.
Thank you.
So I'm going to download that today, honestly, because I want to also be able to include that. Like we talked about this before we started recording, but my sister, Temu, is our training coordinator with Salsa Babies. And so she's done your online training.
Oh, she's coming to the course.
Yeah. She's going to be in the course soon. Yeah. So, and she keeps saying we need to be cueing things differently in our classes. The more that that you can do a little bit differently. So we need to be cueing things a little bit differently. We're aware, but we just didn't know how to talk about it.
Yes.
So thank you. Yeah, you've definitely answered all the questions that I really had for you today. But I like to ask people to finish off their episode with saying, 3 things that you really want to share with new moms, whether it's a recap of something we talked about or
your favorite quote. What would you like to say to moms? 3 things.
Well, first of all, I would like to say, because I still get these messages from time to time privately, just because you're fit, you're not immune to pelvic floor dysfunction. You're not, sorry. And just because you've had a cesarean birth, you absolutely are not immune to pelvic floor dysfunction. The pregnancy does the majority of I don't like saying the word damage, but cause most of these changes to occur. Mm-hmm. And being smart, you have to retrain before you train. Please, peeing when you do CrossFit is not normal. It's not normal, right? And if you're doing something that's creating that much pressure that you have to pee, you should stop doing it. It's mm-hmm. a big red flag. And I guess I would like to end by saying, and I alluded to this earlier, as common as it is, it's not normal at all to leak urine unless you're sitting on a toilet or unless you want to. If you want to pee somewhere else, that's up to you. But I don't care if you've got a full bladder and you have a bag of groceries and you cough or sneeze and you laugh, you should not leak, okay? And any drop of urine, any bit, is incontinence. It doesn't mean, people say, oh, I'm not incontinent, but I just leak a little. It's the same thing.
Thank you. That was fantastic. Yeah, it's so important. I love, in the beginning you were talking about like those signs that tell you something is happening. Absolutely anything that your body, you feel, whether it's a headache or, a little bit of a muscle ache or a little bit of leaking, it's a sign that your body is telling you something else is going on. So
yes.
check in with it. So thank you very much for that message.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Okay.
So we will be recording another video about core health. Check it out after this one. We'll put some notes in the show notes, how to contact or how to find out about how to download the Core Confidence program, and a link to Bellies Inc. as well. Thank you again so much, Sam.
Thank you.